Hey, my friend, can I tell you something surprising about positive people? Most of them are not positive all the time. Some of them overthink late at night. Some of them lose motivation for no clear reason. Some of them smile during the day, then lie awake, replaying old conversations in their head. And maybe you know that feeling too. Maybe your mind has been crowded lately. Too many responsibilities, too many expectations, too many thoughts arriving all at once. So wherever you're listening from right now, whether you're walking home, sitting alone in your room, working quietly, or trying to relax after a long day, I'm really glad you're here. Because while we practice English together today, I don't want to give you fake motivation. I don't want to pretend life is always beautiful and easy. I just want to offer you something honest. A calmer perspective, a softer place to breathe for a little while. You know, people often misunderstand positivity. They imagine someone cheerful all the time, confident all the time, emotionally strong every single day. But real positivity rarely looks like that. Sometimes positivity looks like getting out of bed, even when your mind already feels tired. Sometimes it looks like replying to one message when part of you wants to disappear for the whole day. Sometimes it looks like standing quietly in the kitchen at midnight, drinking cold coffee, trying to calm your thoughts before sleep. That's real life. And honestly, those moments matter more than perfect morning routines ever will. For a long time, I believed I simply wasn't a positive person. My mind always moved toward problems first. One awkward interaction could stay with me for hours. One stressful morning could shape my entire day. I remember sitting in the dark one night, staring at the ceiling while the light from my phone filled the room. My coffee had gone cold beside me, and my brain kept repeating the same question. Why does everything feel heavier for me? Maybe you've asked yourself something similar before. Maybe not with those exact words, but in your own way. Eventually, I started realizing something important. Positive people are not people who never fall into negative thinking. They're people who learn how to interrupt it. Not perfectly, not immediately, but gradually. They notice when their thoughts begin pulling them somewhere painful, and little by little, they guide themselves somewhere healthier instead. That realization changed something for me, because it meant positivity was not a personality trait. It was a practice, a direction, something human beings could slowly learn. Even people like me, even people like you. So if your mind has been tired lately, if you've been carrying stress quietly, if you've been trying to improve your life while also trying to survive your own thoughts, I hope this episode feels comforting. Not because it will magically solve everything, but because sometimes hearing the right words at the right moment can help your nervous system finally relax for a minute. And maybe that's enough for today. So, get comfortable, take one slow breath, and let's begin. Let me ask you something. How many thoughts passed through your mind this morning? Probably too many to count. Some were useful, some were random, and some were probably much harsher than they needed to be. Maybe your mind said things like, "You're already behind. You're not doing enough. Other people are handling life better than you." For some people, those thoughts appear so often, they stop sounding like thoughts. They start sounding like truth. And that's dangerous, because the human mind repeats what it practices. If you repeat fear long enough, fear begins to feel familiar. If you repeat self-criticism every day, eventually your inner voice starts sounding more like an enemy than a friend. I learned this slowly. There was a period in my life when my thoughts became exhausting. Not dramatic, Not some huge emotional breakdown, just constant pressure. I would wake up, grab my phone immediately, see emails, messages, unfinished tasks, and within 5 minutes, my body already felt tense, like my nervous system had entered the day too fast. And the strange part was, nothing terrible had even happened yet, but my mind had already created a storm before the morning fully began. Maybe you know that feeling too. Your body is sitting in a quiet room, but your thoughts are moving like traffic. Fast, loud, restless. One thought leads to another, then another. Then suddenly, your entire mood changes because of a conversation that hasn't even happened yet. That's the exhausting thing about overthinking. The mind can create emotional weight from imagination alone. And for a long time, I thought the solution was to force positive thoughts. But honestly, that never worked for me. Because the harder I tried to fight my thoughts, the louder they became. Then one day, someone told me something simple that stayed with me. You don't have to believe every thought that enters your mind. That sentence felt strangely freeing, because before that, I treated every thought like important information. If my mind said, something will go wrong, I believed it. If my mind said, you're failing, I absorbed it immediately. But thoughts are not always facts. Sometimes they're just stress, fatigue, fear, old emotional habits repeating themselves. And learning that changed the way I listened to myself. Now, when anxious thoughts appear, I try not to immediately follow them. I pause first. I ask myself, is this actually true? Or, is my mind just tired right now? That small pause matters more than people realize, because when you pause, you create space between yourself and the thought. And inside that space, you regain choice. Not every thought deserves your full attention. Some thoughts are just emotional noise. Some are temporary weather passing through your mind. And if you keep chasing every dark thought to the end, you eventually exhaust yourself emotionally. These days, I think of negative thoughts differently. I imagine them like people knocking on a door. Just because someone knocks doesn't mean you have to invite them inside. Some thoughts can simply pass by. And honestly, that idea made me kinder to myself. Because I stopped asking, why do I have negative thoughts? And started asking, why do I automatically trust them? Those are very different questions. You see, a peaceful mind is not a mind without negative thinking. It's a mind that knows how to let certain thoughts leave without building a home for them. That takes practice. And no, you won't do it perfectly. Neither do I. Some days you'll still overthink. Some days your emotions will still feel heavy. That's human. But little by little, you can become more aware of the conversations happening inside your head. And awareness changes everything. Because once you notice a pattern, you finally have the power to interrupt it. So the next time your mind starts spiraling, try this. Pause for 1 moment. Take 1 breath and ask yourself, do I truly need to carry this thought right now? Maybe the answer will still be yes. But maybe, for the first time in a long while, the answer will be no. Can I ask you something gentle? What is usually the first thing you touch in the morning? For many people, it's their phone. Before sunlight, before water, before a full breath. Notifications, emails, news, messages, other people's opinions. And somehow, the world enters our mind before we even fully enter our own day. I used to do this constantly. The alarm would ring, and within seconds, I was already scrolling, checking everything, absorbing everything. My brain never had a quiet beginning. It went from sleeping to overstimulated almost instantly. And I didn't realize how much that affected me until much later. Because mornings shape more than we think. Not perfectly, not magically, but emotionally. The first few minutes of the day often become the emotional direction your nervous system follows afterward. If the morning begins with panic, your body carries that tension forward. If the morning begins with pressure, your thoughts usually speed up too. And over time, you stop waking up peacefully. You start waking up prepared for stress. I remember one particular morning very clearly. Rain was tapping softly against the window. The room still felt dark, quiet, cold. And before even getting out of bed, I checked my phone and saw 3 stressful messages. Immediately, my chest tightened. My mind started racing ahead into problems that didn't even belong to that moment yet. I hadn't brushed my teeth, hadn't stood up, hadn't looked outside. And somehow, the day already felt heavy. That was the moment I realized something important. The world will always ask for your attention, very early, very loudly. But if you never give yourself a calm beginning, your mind slowly forgets what calm even feels like. So I started changing one tiny habit, nothing dramatic. I stopped reaching for my phone immediately after waking up. Instead, I sat still for 1 minute first, just 1 minute. Sometimes I looked out the window. Sometimes I stretched quietly. Sometimes I simply breathed and let myself wake up slowly. At first, it felt strangely uncomfortable, almost like my brain needed noise, needed stimulation, needed urgency. But after a while, those quiet mornings began changing me, not in some life-changing cinematic way, just subtly. I felt less rushed, less emotionally scattered, more connected to myself before the world started pulling at me. And honestly, I think many of us are overstimulated before we're even fully awake. Too much information, too much comparison, too much speed. The nervous system was never designed to absorb this much input every morning, especially not immediately. That's why small morning rituals matter. Not because they're trendy, not because successful people on the internet talk about them, but because your mind needs transitions. Human beings need transitions. We need a moment to arrive inside our own lives before the demands begin. And your morning ritual doesn't need to be impressive. It can be incredibly simple. Open the curtains. Drink water slowly. Stand outside for 1 minute. Listen to quiet music. Write one honest sentence in a notebook. Or maybe just ask yourself, how do I want to move through today? Not, how do I become perfect today? Just, how do I want to move through it? There's a big difference between those two questions. One creates pressure, the other creates awareness. These days, before I check my phone, I try to give myself one calm moment first. Just one, because I've noticed something important. When the day begins with chaos, my thoughts usually become chaotic too. But when the day begins slowly, even difficult moments feel easier to handle. Not easy, just easier. And maybe tomorrow morning, before the noise arrives, you can try giving yourself one quiet minute too. No pressure, no perfect routine, just a softer beginning. Sometimes, that alone can change the emotional direction of an entire day. Let me ask you something honestly. How often do you say yes when your body is quietly asking for rest? Yes to conversations you don't have energy for. Yes to plans you don't even want to attend. Yes to constant notifications, constant availability, constant emotional noise. A lot of people call this being nice, but sometimes it's just exhaustion wearing a polite face. I used to think being a good person meant always being available, always answering messages quickly, always helping, always saying yes. I didn't want anyone to feel disappointed because of me, so I kept stretching myself further and further. And for a while, it looked fine from the outside. I still smiled, still replied, still showed up. But internally, I felt drained almost all the time. Not because I hated people, not because my life was terrible. I was simply giving away emotional energy faster than I knew how to recover it. And eventually, even small things started feeling heavy. Simple conversations exhausted me. Background noise irritated me. My patience became shorter, not because I was becoming cold, but because I was emotionally overloaded. I think many people are living like this right now, constantly connected, constantly reachable, constantly absorbing everyone's emotions. And after a while, the nervous system stops feeling safe. It starts feeling crowded. That's why protecting your energy matters, not in a dramatic cut everyone off kind of way, just in a healthy human way. Because positivity is not only about what you add into your life, it's also about what you stop allowing to consume you. Some things quietly steal your peace. Certain environments, certain habits, certain people, even certain thoughts. And the difficult part is, many of these things become normal if you experience them long enough. You stop noticing how tense your body feels around them. I remember sitting in a cafe one afternoon with someone I had known for years, and the entire conversation was negativity, complaints, criticism, judgment, drama. When I finally walked outside afterward, I noticed my shoulders were physically tense. My mind felt heavy, and I suddenly realized something. Not every interaction leaves you feeling more alive. Some leave you emotionally smaller. That doesn't mean the other person is evil. It just means your nervous systems may not meet in a healthy place anymore. And honestly, understanding that changed the way I chose my environment. These days, I pay attention to how people make me feel after they leave. Do I feel calmer, inspired, safe enough to be myself? Or do I feel emotionally exhausted for hours afterward? That's important information because your energy is limited, more limited than most people realize. You cannot constantly pour into everyone else while completely abandoning yourself. Eventually, something inside you starts running empty. And sometimes self-care is not adding more things. Sometimes it's removing what keeps overstimulating your mind, closing the app, turning off notifications, leaving a conversation earlier, spending one evening alone instead of forcing yourself to socialize when you're already emotionally tired. Those choices matter, and no, they don't make you selfish. They make you aware. I think many sensitive people struggle with boundaries because they confuse boundaries with rejection. But boundaries are not punishment, they're communication. They're a way of saying, I want to protect the part of me that still feels peaceful. That's healthy. That's emotional maturity. And honestly, the people who truly care about you usually understand this more than you expect. Because healthy people don't want access to you at the cost of your well-being. They want the real version of you, not the exhausted version constantly surviving on emotional pressure. So maybe today, instead of asking, what do other people need from me? Ask something different. What has my mind been needing lately? Rest? Silence? More honesty? More space to breathe? Listen carefully. Your body often tells the truth long before your thoughts do. And maybe protecting your peace doesn't require some huge life decision right now. Maybe it starts smaller than that. One quieter evening, one ignored notification, one honest no. One moment where you stop forcing yourself to carry energy that was never yours to hold. Little by little, those moments change you. They teach your nervous system something important. You are allowed to feel safe inside your own life. And honestly, that's one of the most positive things a person can learn. There's something I didn't understand when I was younger. Gratitude is easy on good days. It's easy to appreciate life when everything feels calm, when your energy is high, when your future feels clear. But real gratitude reveals itself during difficult seasons, during the tired mornings, the uncertain weeks, the emotionally heavy nights, when your thoughts won't fully settle down. That's when gratitude becomes meaningful, not as performance, not as forced positivity, but as a quiet form of survival. I used to misunderstand gratitude completely. Whenever people said, "Just be grateful," it honestly frustrated me, because there were moments in my life when I wasn't trying to be ungrateful. I was simply overwhelmed. And when someone is emotionally overwhelmed, generic positivity can feel almost insulting. So for a long time, I ignored the idea entirely. Then one evening, something very ordinary changed my perspective. I had been working for hours. My mind felt crowded, my body felt tense. And I remember walking outside just to clear my head for a few minutes. The air was cold. Streetlights reflected softly on the wet pavement after the rain. Somewhere nearby, music was playing through an open window. And for the first time that entire day, my thoughts became quiet. Not solved, just quiet. I remember standing there thinking, maybe this moment is enough right now. That moment didn't fix my life. It didn't remove stress. It didn't answer my questions, but it interrupted the noise. And sometimes, that's what gratitude actually does. It interrupts the noise. Because gratitude is not pretending pain doesn't exist. It's noticing that pain is not the only thing that exists. There's a difference, a very important difference. Some days, gratitude is big, a new opportunity, a meaningful relationship, a beautiful memory. But other days, gratitude becomes incredibly small. Clean sheets after a difficult day, hot coffee in silence, a deep breath after crying, a friend checking on you at the right moment, sunlight touching the wall in the early morning. Tiny things most people rush past. But honestly, those small moments have carried me through some emotionally difficult periods of my life, because they reminded me that beauty still existed, even while I was struggling. And I think many people miss this. They're waiting to feel grateful after life becomes perfect. But gratitude usually begins much earlier than that. It begins when you finally slow down enough to notice what has been quietly supporting you all along. Your body breathing automatically, music helping you survive certain nights, the comfort of familiar places, the fact that you've endured difficult seasons before, and somehow you're still here. That matters. You know, the human brain naturally focuses on problems. It's trying to protect you. That's why negative thoughts often feel louder than peaceful moments. But gratitude slowly retrains your attention. Not overnight, not magically, just gradually. The more often you notice moments of safety, connection, warmth, or beauty, the more your mind learns that life is not only made of pressure. And honestly, that shift changes the way you experience ordinary days. You stop rushing through everything. You start noticing more. The sound of rain, the feeling of warm sunlight, the way certain songs understand emotions you struggle to explain. you become more present inside your own life, and presence changes people. These days, I try to practice gratitude in a very simple way. Nothing complicated. Sometimes before sleeping, I ask myself, what felt real today? Not perfect, just real. A calm conversation, a good meal, a moment where I laughed naturally, a quiet walk without rushing. Those moments matter to me now, because life is not only built from huge achievements, it's also built from tiny moments your nervous system remembers as safe. And maybe tonight, before you sleep, you can pause for a moment too. Not to force happiness, not to pretend everything is okay. Just to notice one thing that helped you keep going today. One real thing, one honest thing. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's where gratitude begins. Can I tell you something that took me years to understand? You do not need to feel ready before you change your life. A lot of people are waiting for a future version of themselves to appear first. A more confident version, a more motivated version, a less anxious version. Then they tell themselves, when I finally feel better, I'll start. I'll start exercising, I'll start speaking up, I'll start creating, I'll start taking care of myself. But honestly, life rarely works that way, because action often comes before confidence, not after it. I learned this during a period when my energy was extremely low. Nothing felt exciting, nothing felt meaningful. Even small tasks felt emotionally heavy. I remember sitting at my desk one afternoon, staring at unfinished work for almost an hour. My room was quiet except for the sound of a fan turning slowly in the corner, and I kept waiting to feel motivated, waiting to suddenly feel clear-minded and ready, but the feeling never came. Eventually, I became frustrated with myself. Then a strange thought entered my mind. What if I stop waiting to feel different first? So instead of trying to fix my whole life, I chose one tiny action, just one. I opened the document, that's it. Not perfection, not productivity, not some dramatic transformation. I simply opened the document and worked for 5 minutes. And something surprising happened. My emotions didn't transform immediately, but the resistance became smaller. The action created movement, and movement changed the emotional atmosphere inside my mind. That's when I realized something important. The brain often creates motivation after action begins, not before. We imagine motivated people wake up full of energy every day, but many of them simply learned how to begin before they felt emotionally prepared. And honestly, that changed the way I approach difficult days now. These days, when I feel overwhelmed, I stop asking, how do I fix everything? Instead, I ask, what's the smallest meaningful step I can take right now? Sometimes it's answering one email. Sometimes it's cleaning one corner of the room. Sometimes it's taking a shower after emotionally shutting down for hours. Small actions. But small actions reconnect you with yourself. They remind your nervous system we're still moving, and movement matters, especially when anxiety or sadness makes you feel emotionally stuck. I think this is why tiny routines can become so powerful, not because the actions themselves are magical, but because repetition slowly rebuilds trust with yourself. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, your brain notices. Every time you continue showing up, even imperfectly, your identity slowly changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone completely lost. You begin seeing yourself as someone learning how to continue. And honestly, that identity shift is powerful. Because many people think transformation must feel dramatic, but most real transformation feels quiet. It looks like someone drinking water instead of skipping meals again. It looks like someone going outside for 10 minutes after isolating themselves for days. It looks like someone trying again, without announcing it to the world. No audience, no applause, just private courage. And I think that's one of the most underrated forms of strength. The ability to quietly begin again, especially after disappointment, especially after failure, especially after life has exhausted you emotionally. So if you've been waiting to suddenly feel ready, maybe this is your reminder that readiness is not always the beginning. Sometimes willingness is enough. Willingness to try. Willingness to begin small. Willingness to move 1 inch forward instead of staying emotionally frozen. That's enough. More than enough. You don't need to rebuild your entire life tonight. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't even need perfect confidence. Maybe all you need right now is one honest step. One small action that tells your mind, I'm still here and I'm not done yet. There is something difficult about healing that nobody talks about enough. Most of it happens invisibly. No applause, no dramatic music, no obvious proof that you're growing. Sometimes, healing looks exactly like ordinary life, which is why many people believe they are not making progress, even while they actually are. I used to think healing would feel obvious. I imagined one clear breakthrough moment. One morning where I would suddenly wake up peaceful, confident, completely different. But real healing felt much quieter than that. It looked like reacting a little less strongly to things that once ruined my entire day. It looked like calming down faster after overthinking. It looked like noticing my emotions without immediately drowning inside them. Tiny changes, almost invisible at first. And honestly, because the progress was so subtle, I nearly missed it. I remember talking to someone one afternoon who criticized me unfairly. A few years earlier, that conversation would have stayed in my head for days. I would have replayed every sentence, questioned myself repeatedly, carried the emotional weight everywhere. But this time, something was different. The conversation still hurt. But later that night, I noticed my mind had become quiet again. Not instantly, but naturally. And I remember thinking, wait, maybe I am healing. That moment mattered to me more than any motivational breakthrough ever could. Because healing isn't becoming emotionless. It's becoming less controlled by every emotion that appears. That's a huge difference. You still feel sadness. You still feel disappointment. You still have anxious days sometimes. But emotions stop feeling like permanent places you might disappear inside forever. They become experiences, temporary, movable, human. And honestly, I think many people are healing right now without giving themselves any credit for it. Maybe you recover faster after difficult days now. Maybe you're learning how to rest instead of constantly pushing yourself. Maybe you're becoming more honest about what hurts you. Maybe you're finally noticing unhealthy patterns that once felt normal. Those things matter deeply, even if nobody else sees them. Because healing is not always visible from the outside. Sometimes the biggest changes happen internally, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you handle stress, in the way your nervous system slowly begins feeling safer inside everyday life. And that kind of growth takes time, real time, longer than social media usually admits. That's something I wish more people understood. The internet often shows healing as an aesthetic, beautiful routines, perfect habits, peaceful mornings. But real healing can look messy. It can look like crying in your car, then still showing up to work afterward. It can look like taking breaks because your body finally learned how exhausted it has been. It can look like outgrowing people who once felt familiar. Healing changes your standards. It changes what your nervous system is willing to tolerate. And sometimes, that process feels lonely before it feels peaceful. Because growth often creates distance between you and old versions of yourself, old habits, old coping mechanisms, old environments. That's uncomfortable. But discomfort is not always a sign that you're failing. Sometimes it's a sign you're changing. And honestly, I think one of the most healing things a person can learn is patience with themselves. Not lazy avoidance, not giving up. Patience. The kind that says, I'm still becoming someone healthier, even if the process is slower than I hoped. That mindset changes everything. Because when you stop demanding immediate transformation from yourself, you finally create enough emotional safety to actually grow. So if your progress feels slow lately, if your healing feels invisible, if part of you wonders whether you're moving forward at all, I want you to remember something. The fact that you are becoming more aware already matters. The fact that you are listening to yourself differently already matters. The fact that you're trying to create a healthier inner life already matters. Even if the progress feels quiet, especially then. Because some of the strongest transformations in life begin silently.